The unknown threat. The vastness of space was humanity's new frontier. For decades, Earth's finest minds had looked outward, sending ships to the far reaches of the solar system and beyond. But even in the most daring expeditions, no one had prepared for what lay ahead. The HFY Eclipse, Earth's newest and most sophisticated warship, drifted quietly at the outer edges of the solar system. Its sleek design cut through the cold vacuum of space, a testament to human ingenuity and engineering. Captain Rachel Hayes stood on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the stars. Her fingers lightly tapped the edge of her console as she thought about the long journey ahead. The mission was simple: patrol the outskirts of human territory and observe any anomalies. They were meant to ensure that the borders remained secure, especially after the mysterious disappearances of several exploratory vessels. Yet nothing had prepared her for the emergency call that would soon rattle everything she knew. The ship's comms officer, Lieutenant Marcus Cole, broke the silence. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Europa Station. It's marked as urgent." Rachel turned, her eyes narrowing. Europa Station, a mining facility on one of Jupiter's moons, was an essential outpost for humanity. If something had happened there, patch it through, she ordered, her voice steady, but her heart quickening. The screen flickered, then came to life, revealing the face of a woman who appeared visibly shaken. Her uniform was torn, and her hair was wild, as if she had been running or fighting. "This is Europa Station," she gasped, her voice frantic. "We are under attack. Unknown alien ships have appeared out of nowhere. And they're destroying everything. Please, we need help. Anyone, please." Rachel's heart skipped a beat. The colonists on Europa had always been self-sufficient, but now they were facing something they couldn't understand. Alien ships. The thought sent a chill down her spine. "Captain, the nearest vessel is us," Marcus reported, his voice tight with urgency. Rachel clenched her fists, already calculating their course. She couldn't afford hesitation. "Helm, set a course for Europa. Full speed ahead." The crew of the Eclipse moved quickly, readying the ship for combat. As the engines roared to life, the Eclipse surged forward, cutting through space toward Europa. Each second felt like an eternity. As the ship drew closer to Jupiter, the cold silence of space was broken by the sudden appearance of strange vessels. They were unlike anything humanity had ever seen, dark, sleek, and glistening with strange energy patterns that danced along their hulls. Hundreds of them hovered in space, surrounding Europa Station in a tight formation. "Captain," Marcus said, his voice low, "we've never seen anything like this. These ships, they're not human." "Stay alert," Rachel replied, her voice calm despite the rising tension. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet." The Eclipse slid into position, hovering at a safe distance from the alien ships. Rachel could see Europa Station in the distance, under a hail of energy blasts from the unknown attackers. The mining colony was in chaos, but they were too far to engage at this moment. It was time to find out who these attackers were and why they had come to destroy humanity's outpost. "Open a communication channel," Rachel ordered. The screen flickered again, and this time, an alien face appeared. It was tall and angular, with translucent skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Its eyes were dark, filled with intelligence but also an unsettling malice. A voice, smooth yet chilling, reverberated through the bridge. "Humans, you are in the way of our conquest. Leave this space or face annihilation." Rachel's breath caught in her throat. The alien's presence was overpowering, and for the first time in her life, she truly felt the weight of their insignificance in the vastness of the cosmos. But she refused to back down. "This is Captain Rachel Hayes of the HFY Eclipse. You will cease your attack on Europa Station at once. This territory belongs to humanity, and we will defend it." The alien's lips curled into something resembling a smile, though there was no warmth in it. "How amusing," the creature said, its tone dripping with condescension. Your primitive vessel and your puny weapons are no match for us. We will take what we want. Leave now or die." Rachel's grip tightened on her console. There was no retreating. She had to protect the station and everyone on it. The Eclipse was humanity's last line of defense. "We'll see about that," she muttered, as she gave the order to prepare for battle. As the crew of the Eclipse scrambled into action, Rachel's heart raced. The time for diplomacy had passed. Now it was up to humanity's ingenuity and resilience to face the unknown and prove that they would not be intimidated by the dark vastness of space. The battle was about to begin. The spark of defiance. The Eclipse surged forward, its engines thrumming with power as it made its way toward Europa Station. The alien ships, cold and menacing, loomed in the distance, their dark hulls bathed in the eerie glow of distant stars. Captain Rachel Hayes stood at the center of the bridge, her eyes fixed on the incoming threat. The tension was palpable, and the silence was broken only by the hum of machinery and the soft clatter of commands being issued across the crew. "Captain, we're within weapons range," Lieutenant Marcus Cole reported, his voice steady but with a hint of concern. "We can engage at any time." Rachel nodded, her gaze never wavering. "Hold fire for now. I need to know more about these ships before we attack. Keep scanning their systems. Let's see if we can learn anything that gives us an advantage." The crew worked swiftly, fingers flying over consoles and screens flashing with information. The alien vessels were unlike anything humanity had encountered. Their designs were smooth and organic, almost alive, with pulsating energy fields that surrounded them like shields. The Eclipse's sensors pinged as they struggled to get a read on the alien technology. "Captain, the energy signatures are fluctuating," reported Ensign Sophia Allen, the ship's sensor specialist. "They're powering up something. It looks like a coordinated attack." Rachel's mind raced. If the aliens were preparing something more powerful than their initial barrage, the Eclipse wouldn't last long. "Get us into position," she ordered. "We need to draw their fire away from the station." The Eclipse veered sharply, banking away from the alien fleet and heading toward the edge of Europa's orbit. The alien ships followed in a perfect formation, their weapons crackling with energy as they tracked the Eclipse's every movement. It was clear they didn't see the human ship as a threat, at least not yet. But Rachel knew better than to think this would be an easy fight. "Prepare the railguns," she commanded. "Let's see if we can land a hit before they get their main guns online." Lieutenant Dawson, the weapons officer, nodded, his fingers flying over the console. "Railguns charged and ready, Captain. Targeting alien ship at 1 o'clock. Rachel held her breath. The Eclipse was fast, but these alien ships were massive. Each one was easily twice the size of the Eclipse, and their technology appeared far beyond anything Earth had developed. Despite that, there was one thing the Eclipse had that the aliens didn't: the will to fight. "Fire," Rachel barked. The Eclipse's railguns roared to life, sending a barrage of hypervelocity projectiles hurtling toward the nearest alien vessel. The rounds impacted with a thunderous crash, sending ripples of energy across the alien ship's shields. To Rachel's surprise, the projectiles tore through the alien's defenses, leaving deep gouges in the ship's hull. The alien vessel staggered, as if caught off guard. The alien commander's voice boomed over the comms, now tinged with a touch of disbelief. "Impossible. Your primitive weapons have breached our shields." Rachel allowed herself a small smile. "I told you we had surprises." But the victory was short-lived. In an instant, the alien ships retaliated. A barrage of purple energy lanced out from their massive guns, slamming into the Eclipse's shields. The ship shook violently under the impact, the deck beneath Rachel's feet vibrating with each strike. "Shields at 70%. Dawson reported, his voice strained as the ship rocked again. "We can't take many more hits like that." Rachel gritted her teeth, focusing on the task at hand. "Switch all non-essential power to the shields. We need to keep them intact." As the Eclipse tried to maneuver through the incoming fire, it became clear that they were outmatched. The alien ships were faster, their weapons stronger, and their shields nearly impenetrable. Yet, Rachel knew that humanity had something the aliens didn't, a fighting spirit that refused to back down. "Captain," Marcus called out, "there's something strange. One of the alien ships is breaking off from the formation. It's moving toward the station." Rachel's stomach dropped. If they were heading to Europa, they wouldn't just destroy the station, they would annihilate everyone on board. "We have to stop them," she said urgently. "Get us in front of that ship. We can't let it reach the station." The Eclipse banked hard to the left, its engine screeching as it accelerated toward the rogue alien ship. The rest of the alien fleet remained in formation, firing relentlessly at the human ship. But now, Rachel's focus was clear. She had to save the station, and she had to do it fast. "All weapons, focus fire on that ship," she ordered. The railguns and laser turrets on the Eclipse fired in unison, each blast a testament to human determination. The energy beams struck the alien vessel with devastating force, but it wasn't enough to stop it. The alien ship continued its course, heading directly for Europa Station, undeterred by the barrage. "Shields down to 40%. Dawson called out. "We can't keep this up for much longer, Captain." Rachel's heart pounded in her chest. She needed a plan, and fast. She glanced at the tactical display, seeing a sliver of an opening in the alien ship's defenses. It was small, but it was enough. "Ensign Allen, target their engine core. A direct hit should disable them." Without hesitation, the crew followed her lead. The Eclipse unleashed another volley, this time aiming at the heart of the alien ship's propulsion system. The impact was immediate. The alien ship's engines flared brightly before flickering and dying. The rogue alien ship veered off course, its forward momentum grinding to a halt. It was damaged, but not destroyed. Rachel could hear the frustration in the alien commander's voice as it echoed through the comms. "You have not won, humans. We will return. This war has only just begun." As the alien ships retreated, Rachel's heart remained heavy. The Eclipse was battered, its shields barely holding, but they had bought Europa Station enough time to evacuate. The first skirmish had ended, but this was just the beginning of something much bigger. The aliens had underestimated humanity's will to survive, and that was a mistake they would soon regret. "Prepare for the next wave," Rachel said quietly, her eyes never leaving the distant stars. "This fight is far from over." The resilience of humanity. The Eclipse drifted in the cold expanse of space, its hull marred by the battle's toll. Though the immediate threat had retreated, the crew knew the danger was far from over. Captain Rachel Hayes stood on the bridge, her expression resolute as she surveyed the damage reports streaming across the screen. The alien forces had pulled back, but Rachel had no illusions. This was just the beginning. The Zalthari Empire, as the alien ships had called themselves, had not expected humanity to fight back. They had underestimated the one thing that set humans apart from all others, their relentless will to survive. "Captain, damage control teams are working on the shields," Lieutenant Marcus Cole reported, his voice calm despite the gravity of the situation. "It will take time to fully restore power, but we've managed to patch up the critical systems." Rachel nodded, her thoughts already moving ahead. "What about the station? Any updates from Europa?" Ensign Sophia Allen, the ship's sensor specialist, glanced up from her station. "Europa is secure for now. Most of the civilians were evacuated, but there's still some minor damage to the infrastructure. They'll need help, but it's not as bad as it could have been." Rachel's eyes narrowed as she stared at the dark void ahead. "We can't afford to be complacent. If they come back in force, Europa won't stand a chance. We need to know what we're dealing with. Marcus, get me everything you can on this Zalthari Empire. Their ships, their technology, anything." Marcus set to work immediately, his fingers flying over his console. "I'm pulling up all available data now. It's sparse, but I'll get something." While Marcus worked, Rachel turned to her tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Dillon. Sarah, what's the status of our weapon systems? Are we ready for another engagement? Sarah didn't hesitate. Weapons are online, Captain. The railguns are fully functional, and the EMP charges are in position. We can engage at any time. But with all due respect, I recommend we gather more intel before we commit to another attack. We can't afford to go in blind. Rachel rubbed her temple, the weight of leadership pressing heavily on her shoulders. She had never imagined such a situation. An unknown alien empire with technology far beyond humanity's. Yet, despite the odds, humanity had shown its strength. They had fought back, but the next battle could be far more deadly. Agreed, Rachel said, her voice firm. We'll keep our distance for now. Marcus, any luck with the intel? A few moments passed as Marcus sifted through the data. It's not much, but I'm seeing a pattern. The Zolthari ships, based on their energy signatures, seem to rely on an energy-based propulsion system. Their weapons are primarily focused on disintegrating matter at a molecular level, similar to our energy-based railguns, but far more powerful. The shields they use are unlike anything we've seen, organic in nature, yet nearly impenetrable. Rachel's mind raced as she processed the information. So, they're not just superior in weapons. Their entire fleet is built differently. But if their technology is based on energy, and we can disrupt that energy flow. That's the idea, Marcus interjected. If we could create a feedback loop in their energy systems, it might overload their shields or weapons. It's theoretical, but I think it's worth a shot. Rachel thought for a moment, her eyes flicking between the tactical display and the stars beyond. The solution was risky, but they didn't have many options. Prepare the EMP charges. We may need them sooner than expected. The crew continued their work, setting their sights on the immediate task at hand, defending the station and gathering as much information as possible about their new enemies. But Rachel knew that the real battle would come when the Zolthari returned, and when they did, humanity would be ready. Hours passed as the Eclipse remained in orbit around Europa, a silent sentinel watching the stars. The crew was exhausted, but they remained vigilant, knowing that the Zolthari Empire was not finished with them yet. As Rachel stood at the bridge's forward window, she felt a deep sense of responsibility. This wasn't just about protecting Europa, or even Earth. It was about ensuring humanity's place in the cosmos. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden transmission. Captain, we're picking up an incoming fleet, Marcus reported, his voice tense. They're heading straight for us. Rachel's heart sank. She had known this moment would come. How many? At least 20 ships, Captain, Marcus replied. They're moving fast, and their energy readings are off the charts. It looks like they're preparing for a major assault. The Eclipse's crew sprang into action, each member of the team going through their drills. The ship's weapons powered up, and the shields flickered to life. But Rachel knew that they were facing an enemy far beyond their capacity for conventional combat. Their technology was superior. Their numbers were overwhelming. But humanity had survived worse. They had faced insurmountable odds before and had found a way to fight back. And this time would be no different. All hands, battle stations, Rachel called, her voice calm but full of authority. We will defend humanity, no matter the cost. Let's show these aliens what it means to challenge Earth. The Zolthari were about to learn that humans didn't just survive, they fought. And they fought hard. The Eclipse's engines roared to life as it powered toward the incoming alien fleet, ready to prove that no matter how advanced the enemy, humanity would always stand its ground. The heart of the storm. The Eclipse tore through the cold expanse of space, its engines roaring as it closed in on the incoming Zolthari fleet. Captain Rachel Hayes stood at the bridge's helm, her mind sharp and focused. Despite the mounting pressure, the alien vessels were closing in, their dark silhouettes like shadows against the distant stars. This time, there would be no retreat, no opportunity to escape. The battle would be fought here, in the heart of the storm. Captain, Lieutenant Marcus Cole called out, his voice tense. "We've identified their formation. They're using a classic pincer maneuver, two halves closing in from either side. It's designed to trap us." Rachel's heart raced, but she kept her expression calm. The Zolthari had been calculating their every move, using strategies honed over centuries of conquest. They thought they had humanity's number, that the eclipse was nothing more than a tiny speck in their path. But Rachel had seen the strength of the human spirit in action before, and today that strength would be their greatest weapon. "Let them come," she said, her voice unwavering. "Prepare to engage at optimal range. Focus all fire on the lead ship. We take down the biggest one first." The crew moved swiftly, each member of the team knowing their role, their training kicking in as they readied for battle. The ship's railguns powered up, their deadly projectiles locked onto the enemy. The pulse cannons hummed with energy, ready to unleash a barrage of firepower at a moment's notice. Rachel's fingers brushed against the console in front of her, as if feeling the pulse of the ship beneath her command. "All weapons charged," Lieutenant Sarah Dillon reported from the tactical station, her voice sharp with focus. "We're ready, Captain." "Good," Rachel replied. "Let's show them we're not just going to roll over." As the first Zolthari ships drew closer, the crew of the Eclipse held their breath. The tension was thick, the air almost electric with anticipation. Rachel's fingers tightened around the armrests of her chair, her mind running through every scenario, every tactic. It was a gamble, facing a fleet far superior in both technology and numbers. But the Eclipse had something the Zolthari didn't: humanity's ingenuity. "Captain, they're opening fire," Marcus shouted. The bridge shook as a barrage of purple energy blasts surged toward the Eclipse, striking the shields with bone-shattering force. The ship rattled under the impact, alarms blaring as the hull groaned from the strain. "Shields at 40%. Dawson called out, his fingers dancing over the controls. "We're holding, but barely." Rachel's mind was a blur of calculations and orders. She could feel the heat from the battle heating up the bridge. But she remained calm. This wasn't the first time humanity had been on the brink. She had seen Earth rise from the ashes of war and stand tall against impossible odds. They would do it again. "Reroute power to the shields," she commanded. "All non-essential systems offline. We hold this line." The Eclipse shuddered again as another wave of energy slammed into its shields. But this time, Rachel felt a surge of hope. The shields were holding longer than she had expected. That would buy them a little more time. "Now," Rachel shouted, "return fire." The Eclipse unleashed a torrent of energy, the railguns and pulse cannons erupting in synchronized bursts. The projectiles tore through the Zolthari formations, the force of the impact sending shockwaves through the alien ships. The lead ship, a massive vessel brimming with energy, took the brunt of the assault. Its shields flickered, and for a brief moment, its hull exposed itself. "Target their propulsion systems," Rachel ordered, seizing the opportunity. The crew responded immediately. The Eclipse's weapons zeroed in on the vulnerable areas of the alien ship. The shots hit with surgical precision, puncturing the ship's engine core. A massive explosion tore through the Zolthari vessel, sending debris scattering into space. The lead ship was no more. "One down," Lieutenant Dillon said, a small hint of satisfaction in her voice. But Rachel knew better than to celebrate just yet. The remaining Zolthari ships were still closing in, and their response would be swift and unforgiving. The fleet shifted, reorganizing into a tighter formation as they adjusted their strategy. Now, the fight had truly begun. "Braced for impact," Marcus shouted, his hands flying over the controls. The next wave of Zolthari energy blasts struck with devastating force. The Eclipse rocked violently, alarms wailing as the ship's hull groaned in protest. The shields flickered, sputtering under the onslaught. Rachel's grip tightened on the armrest, her jaw clenched as the ship continued to absorb the barrage. The alien ships had adapted quickly, and now the Eclipse was in the fight of its life. Shields down to 20%, Dawson yelled. Rachel's mind raced. She could feel the ship struggling beneath her, but she refused to let panic take hold. There had to be a way to turn the tide. She glanced at the tactical display. The remaining Zalthari ships were regrouping, preparing for another coordinated assault. But they weren't accounting for one thing: human resilience. "Marcus, give me an update on those EMP charges," Rachel said, her voice cold with determination. "We're ready to fire," Marcus replied. "It's a long shot, Captain, but if we can hit their command vessel, we might be able to knock out their entire fleet's coordination." Rachel didn't hesitate. "Do it. Now." The EMP charges fired with a deafening roar, streaking toward the heart of the Zalthari fleet. Time seemed to slow as the missiles cut through the void, their trajectories locked on the largest alien ship. Rachel watched the screen, her breath held in anticipation. The EMP charges struck with blinding flashes of blue and white, sending waves of energy rippling through the alien fleet. The lead Zalthari vessel flickered, its weapons faltering as the EMP blast coursed through its systems. For a moment, the entire fleet seemed to stall, the ships suspended in space as their power grid collapsed. "Direct hit," Marcus shouted, his voice filled with disbelief. The Zalthari fleet seemed to panic. Their once coordinated assault broke down into chaos as their ships scrambled to regain control. It was humanity's moment. With their enemy momentarily disabled, the Eclipse closed in, its weapons firing relentlessly, taking advantage of the Zalthari's disarray. "We're not done yet," Rachel barked. "Finish them." The Eclipse surged forward, its weapons tearing into the alien fleet. One by one, the Zalthari ships were shattered, their once pristine forms crumbling under the might of humanity's defiance. The aliens had underestimated Earth's resolve, and now they were paying the price. As the last of the Zalthari ships exploded in a burst of light, Rachel allowed herself a single, silent breath. The battle was won, for now. But as she looked at the damage around her, the wreckage of the fallen Zalthari fleet drifting into space, she knew this victory was just the beginning. The Zalthari would return, and humanity would be ready. "Set course for Europa," Rachel ordered, her voice calm but filled with an unyielding resolve. "We have work to do. The reckoning begins." The Eclipse hung in orbit above Europa, a battered and bruised shadow of its former glory. Though the battle had been won, the crew could feel the weight of the fight pressing on them. The Zalthari fleet had been repelled, but it was only a matter of time before they would return with greater force. Captain Rachel Hayes knew that this was merely the calm before the storm. The first major victory had come at a cost, and the future would demand even more from humanity. "Captain," Marcus Cole said, his voice quieter than usual as he looked over the damaged systems reports, "we've sustained heavy damage to our engines and shields. The EMP blast did a number on our internal systems. We'll need time to make repairs before we can leave orbit." Rachel nodded, her fingers lightly tapping the armrest of her chair. "How long until we're fully operational again?" "At least 2 days for major repairs," Marcus replied. "But if we're being honest, it might take longer for the smaller repairs and recalibration of the ship's weapons. The damage to the reactor core has delayed things too." She inhaled slowly, her mind already planning their next steps. "Understood. We'll make do with what we have. I'm not about to sit here waiting for the Zalthari to come back. We need to gather as much intel as possible while we can." Ensign Sophia Allen, the ship's sensor officer, chimed in, her face lit by the glow of her monitor. "Captain, I've been analyzing the data we gathered from the Zalthari ships. They're unlike anything we've seen before. Their technology is centuries ahead of us. But I've also detected a pattern, something that might give us an advantage." Rachel stood up, walking toward Sophia's station. "What have you found?" Sophia tapped a few buttons, bringing up a holographic display of the alien fleet. "The Zalthari ships are powered by an unknown energy source. It's not like anything we use. There's no sign of fusion or fission. What's interesting is that their ships appear to be semi-organic, with energy fields that are tied to the structure of the ship itself. The energy flux we detected before the EMP strike, it's almost like their power sources are tied to their biology. If we can exploit that weakness, we might be able to disrupt their systems again. Rachel's mind raced as she processed the information. A biological power source. If we can find a way to isolate that energy, maybe we can shut them down completely during the next fight. Exactly, Sophia said, her eyes bright with the excitement of a potential breakthrough. If we can target the specific frequencies that power their systems, we could disable their ships without needing to fire a single shot, but we'll need to get closer to them to learn more about their power grid. We don't have a lot of time before they regroup. Rachel crossed her arms, thinking quickly. If we can find their weak point, we can level the playing field. But first, we need to reinforce the station. If the Zolthari come back, we can't afford to lose it. Send word to the fleet. We're going to need all the reinforcements we can get. Her words were met with determined nods from her crew. They had been through hell and back, and now they had a target. A chink in the Zolthari's seemingly impenetrable armor. We'll make sure the station is fully fortified, Captain. Lieutenant Sarah Dillon, the tactical officer, said with a firm nod. The Eclipse will be ready for the next round. Rachel nodded, but the weight of responsibility was still heavy. I know you will. But we also need to prepare for something bigger. The Zolthari didn't bring everything they had the first time. They were testing us. We need to be ready for their main force when it arrives. Minutes later, Rachel stood before the holographic projection of Europa Station, her mind racing with possibilities. The station, despite the repairs underway, was still vulnerable. They had no idea how long they had before the Zolthari regrouped and came back in full force. They couldn't afford to be caught off guard again. Captain, Marcus's voice broke through her thoughts, his tone serious. We're picking up something. A fleet, on the move. They're coming. This isn't a drill. Rachel turned sharply. How many? At least 50 ships, Marcus reported, eyes wide as he scanned the readout. It's a full invasion force. The bridge was silent for a moment, the gravity of the situation settling over them like a heavy blanket. Rachel's mind whirred as she calculated their options. They were still waiting for critical repairs, their weapons were still less than optimal, and the Zolthari were coming in overwhelming numbers. We don't have the luxury of waiting for a perfect setup, Rachel said decisively, her voice cutting through the tension. Prepare the station's defenses, get the Eclipse back to full power, and have all weapons ready. This is our fight. We may not win, but we will make them regret ever underestimating humanity. The crew moved with purpose, their fear replaced by a fierce determination. The Zolthari might have had superior technology, but humanity had something the aliens couldn't comprehend: resilience. As the Eclipse prepared for the coming storm, Rachel stood tall, looking out into the void of space. This was no longer just a fight for Europa. This was a fight for Earth's future, a fight for every human colony scattered across the stars. The Zolthari might have had the power, but humanity had the heart to face it. And Rachel was determined to ensure that heart would never falter. Ready all systems. The battle for our survival starts now, she said. Her voice rang out, filled with unwavering confidence. We will fight. We will survive. And we will win. Into the abyss. The cold vastness of space was a battlefield now. The Eclipse loomed over Europa Station, the dark shadow of humanity's most advanced warship cutting through the endless expanse. Its systems were repaired as best as possible, but the ship still bore the scars of its previous battle with the Zolthari. The crew moved with purpose, aware that this would be their last chance to prepare before the full force of the alien fleet arrived. The countdown to the next conflict had already begun. Captain Rachel Hayes stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the tactical displays in front of her. The Zolthari fleet was nearing, and from the data they had gathered, this time they weren't coming to test. They were coming to destroy. The entire bridge was abuzz with activity. the crew tense but determined. Rachel knew that this would be no easy fight. If anything, it was going to be far worse than the first encounter. "Captain," Marcus Cole said, his voice tinged with urgency, "we've got Zalthari ships entering the system, close to Europa. And there's something new. Their fleet seems to have reorganized." Rachel's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Marcus zoomed in on the holographic projection, revealing the incoming alien fleet. The ships were arranged differently than before, their formation more aggressive, almost as if they were preparing for a full-scale assault. They've shifted their strategy. Instead of just sending waves, they've concentrated their forces into a tight formation, with a massive command ship at the center. "Have they been able to regain their shields after the EMP strike?" Rachel asked, her mind already working through possible strategies. "Yes," Marcus replied grimly. "The feedback loop we created caused temporary disarray, but they've recharged their energy grids. I'd wager they've strengthened them as well, considering their response." Rachel clenched her fists. The battle ahead would be unlike anything they had faced before. The Zalthari were no longer just invaders. They were determined to end humanity's resistance. But Rachel refused to give in. Humanity had never backed down, and it wasn't about to start now. "Prepare the Eclipse for evasive maneuvers," Rachel ordered, her voice steady, though her pulse quickened. "Get the weapons systems online, and load everything we have into the railguns and EMP devices. This fight isn't just about holding them off. We need to cripple them, to give Europa Station a chance to survive." The crew worked quickly, each member taking their place with calm precision. The ship's engines hummed to life as the Eclipse shifted into position, ready to face the incoming storm. It would be a battle to the death, but Rachel would not let her crew or humanity fall. "We're within range," Lieutenant Sarah Dillon called out. Her fingers moved across her console, adjusting the targeting systems. "They're firing first." Rachel's eyes narrowed as beams of purple energy streaked toward them. The first wave of Zalthari fire collided with the Eclipse's shields, shaking the ship violently. The bridge rumbled under the intensity of the impact. Alarms blared, but the shields held, barely. "Shields at 40% and dropping," Dawson shouted. "They've powered up their main guns. Another volley like that, and we're done." Rachel didn't hesitate. "Engage evasive maneuvers. Get us out of their line of fire." "Marcus, calculate a trajectory to lead them toward the asteroid field. We'll use it to our advantage." The Eclipse swerved sharply, its engines flaring as it darted toward the dense asteroid belt that surrounded Europa. The Zalthari ships followed, but their bulk made it difficult for them to navigate the maze of floating rocks. The Eclipse, with its advanced systems and agility, was far more nimble. "Direct hit," Lieutenant Dillon called out as another blast from the Zalthari fleet tore through their shields. "We've lost power to the aft thrusters." Rachel's jaw clenched, but she didn't let the frustration show. "We're not giving up yet. Continue evasive maneuvers. Focus fire on the lead ship. Let's see if we can cause some chaos in their formation." The Eclipse returned fire, sending railgun rounds screaming toward the alien vessels. The impact rattled the lead Zalthari ship, causing it to shudder, its shields flickering. But the alien fleet adapted quickly, and their return fire intensified, each blast striking the Eclipse with the force of a wrecking ball. "Shields at 10%, Dawson reported, his face pale with the strain of the battle. "The next hit will breach the hull." Rachel's thoughts raced. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and the station wasn't yet fully protected. But she had one last trick up her sleeve. "Target their command ship," Rachel ordered. "All weapons focused on that central vessel. If we can disrupt their leadership, the rest of the fleet will fall into disarray." The Eclipse fired everything it had, the railguns sending a barrage of hypervelocity rounds toward the Zalthari command ship. The first few rounds missed, but then, with deadly precision, one of the projectiles struck the ship's engine core, sending a massive shockwave through its hull. The command ship staggered, its systems flickering as it struggled to regain control. "We've got a hit," Marcus shouted, his face breaking into a rare smile. "Their command ship is down." But the victory was short-lived. The remaining Zalthari vessels continued their assault, now more frantic as their leadership faltered. The Eclipse's shields flickered again, barely holding under the barrage of fire. The asteroid field was their last chance to gain the upper hand. "Captain, we've got company." Ensign Allen's voice echoed through the bridge. "More ships. Zalthari reinforcements are coming from the far side of Europa." Rachel's heart sank. They were surrounded. "Brace for impact," she shouted. "Prepare the EMP charges. This is going to get ugly." The Eclipse pulled into the heart of the asteroid field, using the massive chunks of rock for cover as the Zalthari fleet closed in. The battle was becoming a deadly game of cat and mouse, each side trying to outmaneuver the other, each desperate to find the weakness that would break the other's resolve. "We're not backing down," Rachel muttered to herself. Her crew, her people, were all that mattered now. Not today. As the Eclipse darted between the asteroids, the battle raged on, humanity's future hanging in the balance. The Zalthari were powerful, but Rachel knew something they didn't. The will of humanity could never be broken, no matter how dire the odds. This was not just about winning a fight. It was about survival. And Rachel Hayes would do whatever it took to ensure humanity would rise from the ashes of this war, stronger than ever.